this it's gonna be on a final exam. But anyway, so we quickly go through it, and this is another applications we can apply to analyze something using a similar type of setup, so that we can see that what we can do with this type of model. Okay. All right, let's just quickly go through this. The standard trade model can be modified to analyze international borrowing and lending. And we have two goods here, but forget about food and clothes production. And now here we have current goods and the future good. This is just same good, but the time is now and the future. So two goods are current and foreign consumptions and current consumptions. All right, same good. And this is how the model set up. So don't worry about it. Forget about everything we have learned. And now we are looking at international borrowing, right? So in order to set this up, we just simply borrow something we have learned in this chapter, the similar type of setup, and then we analyze different goods. Okay, in here we analyze the future goods and current goods. So countries usually have different opportunity to invest to become able to produce more in the future. So you have a choice to produce now, or you have a choice to produce in the future. So basically, what happens if you want to produce now, right? So you want to consume now. If you want to consume now, that means you will be allocating more resources today for consumption, and then you will give up some consumption in the future. But if you give up the consumption now, then you will push backward your consumption in the future, and also you can consume more because there will be some interest rate earning, right? Or in this setup, you can consider this is some type of like production gain in the future due to some type of technology improvement or something. All right, so a special kind of production possibility frontier. And intertemporal means like intergenerational, right? Like kind of like chance period from now to future. So intertemporal production possibility frontier. It's a little different than the previous one that we have because this is intertemporal. And it depicts the different possibility combinations of current output and future output. Now, because we are trying to use the similar setting to have a different analysis on different perspectives. Now, when you look at this production frontier line, it's very similar to before, to what we have seen previously. But the difference is when we look at the x-axis, we have current consumption, and the y-axis, we have the future consumption. Okay, so basically, this is what you can produce in the future, and this is how much you can produce right now. So a country can trade current consumption for future consumptions in the same way that it can produce more of one good by producing less of other goods. So when you're looking at the graph here, if you choose to produce at this point, it means that you are gonna produce this much now and produce this much in the future. So your future productions is going to be lower if you choose to produce at this point. So let's take another point to see what happens. So suppose if you take the point here, look at the point here. It means that now you want to produce only this much, and you sacrifice the consumption today, this much consumption today, this much production today, in order to gain that much in the future. Okay. One way you can think about it is that you can lend and borrow resources from another country, from a trading partner, right? So if you lend the money to your trading partner, that means you don't have the money right now to produce, and your trading partner will get your money, right? And then in the future they will return the money to you, and then you can produce in the future. Basically, this is what it means. So take a look at international borrowings. Suppose that the home country has production possibility bias towards current output. So imagine if home country is good at it has some bias production towards current output. That means like today you are good. I mean maybe for some reason, right? You are really good at producing today, but not very much in the future. And maybe your population is older and still now good, right? And maybe the foreign countries' population is too young to produce. I just make it up, but you can think about you can consider in this way, all right? So so you are good at producing today, while the foreign country is good at producing in the future. So foreign has better opportunity to invest now to generate more output in the future. Okay. And of course, if you lend and borrow, that there will involve return, and here is the return. The R is the interest rate. So if you borrow 1 unit of output, you must repay the $1 plus the interest R in the future, where the R is the real interest rate. So the price of future consumption relative to current consumption is 1 over 1 plus R. And what is this? This is a discount rate, right? This is a discount rate. There has to be a discount rate when you are trading between now and in the future. And think about that. If you um, if you receive a beer, right? How much a beer worth to you today? It's exactly a beer. But if somebody promise you, hey, I'm going to give you a beer in 10 years. So one beer in 10 years is not equal to a beer today, because you will be like, well, 10 years, I don't know if I'm still alive, right, by that time. So if you promise you'll give me a beer in the future, like 10 years in the future, I will be, well, maybe it's not as good as you can give me a beer today. Make sense? So basically anything in the future must be discounted, and this is the discount rate. For example, right, the R is discount rate. So one beer in the future worth less than one beer today. Okay. So 1 unit of current consumption is worth 1 plus R of future consumptions. And this is the interest rate. On the other hand, you can consider that's also the discounted rate, right? 1 over 1 plus R is discount rate. All right. So the idea should be simple here. So home exports current consumption and import future consumption. And suppose home lends to the foreign country by consuming less than it produces now. So home country is good at producing now, right? So they produce a lot and then use the remaining, the extra output that home produce. Then home can lend it to foreign country. Okay, home able to consume more than it produce in the future, because in the future the foreign country will pay back to home country. All right. So foreign borrows to be able to consume more than it produce now. So foreign is good at producing in the future, for example, then they know they are not good at producing right now, so they borrow from you for consumption. Whatever you produce, they will borrow, and then in the future, and they will start producing and then try to return you back. Okay. And when international borrowing and lending are allowed, the world real interest rate is determined by intersections of the world relative demand and the world relative supply. The world interest rate will be between the real interest will be the real interest rate and exists in the two countries prior to international trade. So this is something that we have seen before, right? And we use the same type of setup, but analyze different things. And then using the same logic, we can determine where the real interest rate will be in the world is somewhere like between the home country's relative supply and demand, and also the foreign countries' relative supply and demand. So somewhere in between. So this is how the international. So in the previous material we have learned, this is the model how we determine the price, right? The price of traded goods, and here the price of the traded goods is the interest rate. All right, the price of the future and current consumption is this is the price of consumption today, right? So if you think about that, if you consume a beer today, and this is the discounted rate, right? It means that you will be giving up that much of beer in the future, right? So suppose you have 5% interest rate, right? You can earn 5% on your investment. If you spend the money today, it means that you will be giving up the money plus 5% of return in the future, and this is the price of your consumption today. Yep. So we have done this chapter again, and the last part of the chapter here, the international borrowing and lending. I don't think I will put that on the final exam because this is just another application example of another application on what we can do with this kind of setup. All right. So this is just an example of what we can do. So I'm not going to ask you any questions on this material, and I will leave the summary for you, and you can read it by yourself. And I think that's it for chapter 6. And we will be moving on to chapter 7. Before we do that, I would like to ask anyone who have